Now I'm going to show you the process for dyeing it and making it look nice, which is fairly straightforward. I'm going to dye right along the black line of that acrylic that I heat pressed on there. Now I didn't carry the heat pressed image all the way to the edge for a reason. Even though they suggest with the actual company that you heat press all the way to the edge, I have found with that acrylic that you heat press on there, you cannot punch holes through it without ruining it. So wherever I do those stitching holes, that acrylic that I heat pressed on there has to be inside of those stitching holes, or it'll actually ruin the acrylic and cause it to peel off for some reason. So do not try to heat press on the entire thing and then punch holes through it. It won't work. Sorry, that's the reality of it. And unfortunately, you can see the way that I've cut that, it's left a little bit of a sort of white area on the edge. I should have cut right along that black, and that would have prevented that. But I left a little bit too much of the white showing, and that was my mistake. So I'm going to slowly dye along the edge, and I'm going to go with green. I happen to like green, being Irish, well, American / Irish background. And that's kind of the reason why I did the green cat with a sort of leprechaun hat and came up with the name Leprechaun as opposed to leprechaun. That's kind of the point of it. Cats are sort of mystical, you know, and in a lot of mythology, cats are attached to the spirit world in some way for very clear reasons in my mind, because they have a sort of soulful look to them. Anyway, I'm now dyeing the edge, the surface. I'm not going to bother with the bottom. Not really any point to it because it's going to be glued to the case. You're not going to see it, and there's also going to be a lining. Okay, now I'm going to be beveling, burnishing the edge there, and I have this burnishing gum called Tokanol, I believe it's what it's called, and I've got my burnishing tool. I need a new one. This one's shot. It's actually been burned on the tip there, and it doesn't work right, unfortunately. So I slowly burnish the cross first, and then I'll burnish the edge and the credit card holder. This is the one thing I'm really bad at. I don't know how people, these experts, get these really clean, almost waxed edges that look perfect. I have never been able to get that. Never been able to get an edge that looks just pristine, where it's almost just smooth like butter. It always looks a little rough for some reason. So there you have it. I'm now doing the edge with this Tokanol substance. It's a burnishing gum. It took me a while just to figure out how to use the right stuff and where to get it. I mean, I've watched a lot of leather videos on YouTube. In fact, that's the only training I've had at all, is just self-taught, watching expert videos on YouTube. And that's kind of the point of my videos, is that if you're an amateur with a little bit of instruction and the time and the wherewithal, you can make this stuff. You can, as an amateur, do this stuff. Okay, I'm going to create a lining, and I'm going to use lamb hide for this because lamb hide's great for this kind of thing. So I'm just sort of shaping it. I got two different greens I've tried, and I've decided to use the one that's lighter. And the lining is going to show through the cross area, and it's also going to show through the little credit card area. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the lining. So I can do a full glue all along the back, but that lining will serve as a little area for the credit card to slide in and out of. And you got to be really careful when you're doing lamb hide, when you put dye down. If you brush too hard on it, it can leave black streaks for some reason. So just be mindful of that when you're doing lamb hide. And as you can see here, I've left some pock marks. I have to redo it, which is fine. If you let that dye dry too long, you'll end up with something that looks sort of pasty and plastic. In fact, that's one of the problems with lamb hide, is it has a sort of plastic look to it when you dye it. I don't know why, it just does. In fact, a lot of leather does if you're not careful. If you do a more than one or two coats of dye on leather, oftentimes it looks pasty and plastic looking. So I've got the basic credit card back plate, and now I'm working on the green lining for it. I'm looking for a piece of waxed paper that I can use, and I need this waxed paper to keep the vacuum seal bags that I have will leave an impression if I don't have something, a surface over it, and I'm going to use either waxed paper or a piece of leather. Now I am now gluing just the edge because I don't want that credit card holder area to be interfered with. That's why I only did the edge where the credit card's going to slide in and out of. Where the cross is, it doesn't matter. That's fully glued on. And then I will put it in a vacuum seal bag with wax paper over it, and then literally vacuum seal it together to ensure that that glue dries properly. Now I'm doing that right now. I didn't show that because I didn't want to change the camera position. That's a little lazy of me, but I've shown how to do the vacuum sealing before, and you know, sometimes it's not worth doing. Okay, so it's been vacuum sealed and it's been glued, and I will now trim the lamb hide along the edge. And you know, I'm just doing this by eye. I'm not going to do a ruler with this because this lamb hide's really thin. It's easy to trim with a razor blade, particularly if you have a clean, fresh, sharp blade, which I didn't at first. So I'll just trim along the edge, trim to the inside of it, and when I glue this into place and stitch it, it will lock in or seal in that lamb hide so that it doesn't leave any fringe edges and all that. As you can see there, I'm just trimming along the edge. Almost done. You get used to doing this kind of stuff, and there you have it. I have the basic shape for it. I have the lining in place now. I'm restamping the hole so it goes through the lamb hide, as you can see here. That helps to make sure that the needle will go through it. Otherwise, you have to use sharp needles, and that can cause problems. It can be very frustrating trying to push through even lamb hide with a sharp needle. It can cause separation between the two leather pieces and just overall be a pain in the butt. So slowly working along the edge there until I have all the holes nice and open and fresh and good. And it's coming together. I like the way it's looking. I think it has a nice look to it. And this one I'm planning to use mink oil instead of the resin, because the resin gives it a plastic look. And that's one thing mink oil is better about, is it doesn't look plastic. It looks like real leather, which I like. Even though the little acrylic piece is technically a piece of plastic, it still looks more leather looking when you use just mink oil. So I'm approaching the end of the third video, and I will then have to take this piece and then actually chart out the holes for drilling, because I have to drill through the plastic backing in order to get this thing done.